I'm going to try to be fair here, be as honest as I can, not freak out, but I can't promise you anything.
Vinny is a man, always doing what he can. Growing up tough, he knows how to be rough, but had a brain working with numbers and stuff. Vinny.
If I had a brain, I wouldn't be a Met fan. It's incredible. Absolutely incredible. The longest losing streak in Mets history. I don't get it. I don't get it. I'm shell shocked. I thought we were actually going to get lucky and win 1-0 today. I don't understand how a $370 million payroll can't score any runs. Any runs in a ballpark that had the wind blowing out at 20 or 25 miles an hour, where if you popped the ball up to shortstop, it ended up on the warning track. Good things come to those who wait. I don't know if I believe this anymore. Second largest payroll. Fangraphs has the Dodgers at 397, but they're probably paying out 40 million of it with deferrals because they're a good franchise. 10-game losing streak goes to 11. It's one of the longest in franchise history. I think today was the longest. It became the longest. About 7 games behind in the East. Juan Soto on the IL with a right calf strain. I didn't believe that they could ever start this slow. I didn't believe that after 22 games, Lindor would have a home run and an RBI. And they started the season off against Paul Skeens, the best pitcher in the National League, and roughed him up and knocked him out. And it looked like, well, this will be a little different this year. And since then, they've won 5 games. Now, the longest losing streaks in Met history, 65 seasons. They've had 14 losing streaks spanning 10 or more games. In 1962, they lost 17 in a row. So the longest Met losing streak I'm talking about really in modern day here. And that's the 22nd longest streak in MLB history, 17 games. And then they had a 15-game losing streak as well. So you see where I'm going with this franchise, right? In 82, they lost 15 in a row. They were terrible that year. I remember I was 21, and I'd watch Met games on a Friday night while my friends are waiting to go out. Shows you what my life was about back then. In 1980, they lost 13. That was a tough 80, 81, 82. 2002, they lost 12. And now in 2026, 11, and to be determined. 4 teams in Major League Baseball history have had lost 10 or more games in a row and made the playoffs. The last were the Guardians in 25. And of course, because of the new format with wild card and stuff, that's a little skewed. And only one of those teams had an April like this, and that was the 51 Giants. They had lost 11 consecutive. And we're there now at 11. Their last win was almost 2 weeks ago. They won 4-3 in 10 innings, and that was lucky against Arizona. Now, the upcoming schedule, they're coming home, which they need to get home. They'll start a series with Minnesota Tuesday evening. Hopefully, Soto will be back. Is Stearns the culprit? Hey, Emmanuel. Is Stearns the culprit? As you see, I'm shocked. I can't even talk here. But look, Boy Genius, as Joe Beningo affectionately or non affectionately calls him, Harvard under 40 yuppie. Usually is the smartest person in the room. The problem is he thinks it. One of the things I learned when I was in stock brokerage was it's not really important to know what you do know. It's important to know what you don't know. What you don't know can hurt you, not as much what you do know. I have so much more of my life in the rearview mirror than opposed to ahead of me. I don't have time for these losing streaks. I've been a fan since 1970 when my Aunt Dolores used to talk me off the ledge because even back then I was suffering. They were 2-5 coming out of the gate, and I'd think the season was over and I'm in tears. And she'd say, "Don't worry, don't worry." She prolonged my worry, and still nothing happened. And that was a year off of a World Series. I wasn't even fortunate enough for someone to show me the Mets the year before, so at least I could have been happy with a World Series, right? No, I had to become a fan and wait 16 years. 1973, I remember laying in bed. My father couldn't stand baseball, but he watched with me when Bud Harrelson, I believe, made the last out. He popped out to Bert Campaneris, and I saw Bert Campaneris jumping all over the field. I knew, you better change, but I didn't. I bounced at Shout in the mid 80s. I became friendly with a few Mets. Bob Ojeda was a friend of mine. He used to leave me tickets all the time. I went double dating with him. I set him up with a girl. Knew all the Mets. That was the most exciting season because, hey, I was 25 years of age. When you're 25, it's exciting to begin with. I'm working in a hot club. I'm single. That has a lot to do with it. And I'm just having a ball. Never knew it could change. And the Mets won the World Series. I was 25 and I said, wow, this is going to be easy to like this team. I forgave the Mets for the 15 years previous that I kind of cried and kind of said, oh, I can't believe this. And always patiently by July waited for the Rangers to start because I became a Ranger fan in 71. I jumped on the field when the Mets clinched the division, 1986. I remember Dave Magadan was playing first base. I was with my friend. He was a vice president of the Little People of America Association, I think Northeast chapter, Scott Seidman. And with Scott, hey, Taylor, how are you? I totally agree with you, Taylor. I totally agree, man. It is terrible, Taylor. I remember being there and jumping on the field, ripping grass out of the field when the Mets won. Dave Magadan started at first. Keith Hernandez had a migraine, I think, or probably was hungover. And because I used to be there when he was getting hungover. And it was incredible, incredible feeling. 86, the Mets had the city. Yankees, they had Don Mattingly, which was arguably the best player in baseball. But the Mets were the toast of the town. Big in Manhattan, the whole building was an advertisement for Doc Gooden painted on the side of the building. Incredible. What has happened? I've gotten older with nothing to show for it in 40 years. Only age. Now, let's get to David Stearns. David Stearns came in with a great reputation. He actually started as an intern with the New York Mets when he was in college. I believe he went to Houston and worked and then went to Milwaukee as their Pobo pretty much. president of baseball operations. Steve Cohen bought the team and waited a couple of years for him to be available. And look, for all intents and purposes, he had a great reputation, young executive. You see, one of the teams, I forget which team it is, has a 33-year-old manager. Baseball has changed now. Back in the day, you'd have 55, 65-year-old crusty managers, right? Old guys that had played. And when you were a little kid, you remember them as players and they became managers. Now it's a young man's game. It certainly is. Some of even the analysts are young now. But look, last year, see what happened with the Mets was Stearns wanted to build this team in his image. No, not a bunch of 37-year-old little Jewish guys. I'm talking about what he thought the new era of baseball should represent. That is flexibility, players that can play multiple positions. He did that in Milwaukee, and he did it well. Not giving long-term contracts to pitchers. Okay, has a point there. You're never going to win without an ace, but you know what? You better hope your ace doesn't get hurt because the shelf life is probably 5 to 7 years before you need your first Tommy John surgery. Do you really think Paul Skeens is not going to need one in the next 3 or 4 years? Of course he's going to. You have pitchers now that have had 2 Tommy Johns and they're 29 years of age. But last year, Stearns didn't luck out. I'll tell you why. Because the Mets got lucky the first year under Stearns. Stearns went to the bargain bin and signed Luis Severino. Didn't want to sign Corbin Burns. Got lucky with that. Burns went on a DL and hasn't pitched yet because of a Tommy John. He needed surgery. So it looked like Stearns knew what he was doing. As soon as he went down, wow, maybe Stearns knows what he's doing. He didn't believe in signing pitchers long term because they get hurt. And he doesn't like to tie up his roster for years on end with money. Don't look at Soto. Soto was Stevie Cohen. That was all a Cohen move. There was no way Stearns is comfortable with giving Soto that money, tying up probably $800 million for 14 years. But what happened was the Mets outperformed Stearns' first year. Stearns went to the bargain basement, and every move he made worked out. Even signing to a minor league contract Julio Iglesias, who ended up hitting 330 or 340 for the Mets and making a hit record besides. And the whole team had a feel-good attitude. Everything worked out. Yeah, Emmanuel, 2 pennants in 40 years. And Stearns couldn't break the team down last year. Coming off of one game that if it turned the other way, you would have gone to the World Series the previous year. How do you break down the team? So he had to roll with it instead of breaking it down last year. And it came apart. They had the best record in baseball early June. Since June 11th or 12th, the Mets have the 5th or 4th worst record in baseball. Over 100 games now. But last year, he made some moves at the trade deadline. And look, not going to lie to you, I thought they were great moves. He went and got Ryan Helsley from the Cardinals, all-star closer, right? He wanted to build the bullpen. He got Taylor Rogers from the Giants, ground ball expert, ERA in the low 2s every year, and rubber arm, can pitch every day. Got Gregory Soto from Baltimore, live arm left-hander. He didn't have to give up all that much, although he ended up doing it. And Cedric Mullins, a center fielder that could catch the ball, because last year the Mets had the worst production of any outfield center fielder in the major leagues. Cedric Mullins, they got him 3 years too late. And he even struggled defensively with the Mets. Helsley was a shit show. Tyler Rogers, although he was effective, wasn't the shutdown reliever that he had been. He was, if he came in with an inherited runner, he let that runner in, where before he used to be great. Mullins was an unmitigated disaster. But if you looked at the reviews the day after the deadline, everyone gave Stearns an A for building a super bullpen. You had Diaz, who was having a tremendous year. Well, Helsley ended up at least blowing 5 games, and the Mets, remember, finished a game out of the wild card, same record as the Reds, but the Reds had the tiebreaker. Any of those games, if Helsley doesn't blow one of them, the Mets, an all-star closer here, not even asked to close, just come in the 7th inning or 8th inning and get a couple of outs. Nothing went right. Okay. Was it Stearns' fault? Well, if you keep on making moves that don't work out, even if they seem to be good moves at that moment, eventually you have to take the blame. Okay? I'm not the president of baseball operations. You're supposed to know more than me. If I think it's a great move because on paper it looks great, so be it. But if you keep on making a mistake, I'm not making these moves. He got rid of Brandon Nemo, Pete Alonso, Edwin Diaz, which Edwin Diaz I don't think he wanted to get rid of. I think that he played hardball with the negotiations, never thinking anybody would offer offer Diaz a 4th year, and the Dodgers came in and swept them up. And when you're talking to Diaz, I could tell you how that went. They probably said, look, here's your offer. We're beating the Mets offer. We go to the World Series every year. We're coming off 2 straight. The only difference is now you can't go and bring the Mets this offer or the offer's off the table. Either you sign it now or that's it. He signed it. Guarantee you that's what happened. Politics. I heard this from someone who works for the organization. I wouldn't bet my life that it's 100% true. Brandon Nemo was a big Republican. His wife had an argument in the family room with Francisco Lindor's wife, who supports Mamdani, and he's gone. Jeff McNeil, gone. Pete Alonso, gone. Now, I do not blame politics for Pete Alonso because Stearns didn't want Alonso the year before last. And what happened was during the fan appreciation day at Citi Field, fans were booing him and screaming at Cohen to sign Alonso. And I think Cohen stepped in and said, we got to sign him. But Stearns didn't want him then. Right-hand first baseman generally don't age that well. He's not an athletic guy. I do believe that Kodai Senga's injury, where he lost the season last year, was because of an errant throw by Pete Alonso, who just couldn't throw first base. And I think if Senga was having an all-star year up until that point, he had about a 1.4 ERA, was having an amazing year. And there's no doubt in my mind, and I'm saying this, and I would say this till the cows come home, if Senga doesn't get hurt on that errant throw, the Mets make the playoffs last year. I think Stearns blamed Alonso's defense for ruining the season. I really believe that. And the year before, Edwin Diaz hit first base wrong and almost tweaked a groin because of a bad throw from Alonso as well. He didn't go down. So, yeah, Alonso, he's not there for defense, though. He's there for 35 to 40 homers, 120 plus RBIs, and to play 158 to 160 games a year. He's an Iron Man there. Stearns did not think he would translate well in years 2, 3, and 4 of a 5-year contract. Well, how's that working out for you now, David? The Mets don't have a first baseman. All he pushed was run prevention. I didn't know he meant run prevention where the Mets wouldn't score any runs. You have guys playing out of position. Bo Bichette was certainly a knee-jerk reaction because the Mets lost out on a free agent. Diaz, Stearns got cute with the negotiations. So Nemo, Diaz, Alonso, and McNeil. McNeil, even Met fans are sick of his shtick. So Bichette, you go out and sign Freddie Peralta. You trade for him, actually. And you also get Tobias Myers in that deal, a 27-year-old, very serviceable right-hander who you have for the next 4 or 5 seasons. Good move. You gave up 2 of your top minor league players in Brandon Sproat, who is a starter who's having a rough time, but there's room for improvement there. And Williams, a second baseman. Luis Robert Jr., a reclamation project. Soto aside, I think that he liked the idea of bringing Luis Robert Jr. in as a solid center fielder. You can move Soto to left where his defense, right field's a rough field at Citi Field. Yankee Stadium, Soto was okay because it's a much smaller right field. Reclamation project. And he's been okay. Load management, know when to play him, rest him. Marcus Semien. That was a swap pretty much. 4 years of Brandon Nemo for 2 years of Semien. He thought Nemo's fielding had taken a step back, which it had. They also were paying him center fielder money when he can't play center field anymore. But Nemo is having a pretty good season with Texas. Alonso's off to a slow start. Alonso, you let walk to Baltimore. There's no doubt in my mind that if you ask me what situation is going to straighten out, will it be Alonso getting on track with the Mets? No doubt in my mind, at the end of the year, Alonso will have 35 homers. No doubt in my mind. I don't think the Mets are going to have 88 to 90 wins that they'll need to make the wild card. And Jorge Polanco, who can't stand. Free agent, he can't stand. He has an Achilles problem. He has bursitis around the Achilles tendon. It's not dangerous. It's not structurally debilitating, but it is debilitating. I had bursitis in my shoulder and had it cleaned out. Bursitis is very, very painful. And Polanco now is on the IL. So these are moves that Stearns made. So who gets blamed for them? Me? Let's get to Mendoza, the manager. Mendoza has the 4th or 5th worst record in the last 110 games. The Mets, over the last 110 games, are on pace for about 105 to 110 loss season, if you prorate it. The team is lifeless. Francisco Lindor hasn't walked since Lindor's been out of the lineup. Think about it. And think about the Mets were 7-4. Not playing very well. 7-4. And now they're 8-15. You have a third baseman that's hitting about 220, who certainly looks injured, Bichette. I don't think his sprint speed has gone down a full second from the beginning of last season, which would lead me to believe under 30 years of age, and he had a leg injury last year, he probably still is injured. You have Lindor, a home run and an RBI, hitting 200, 23 games into the season. You have Carson Bench, who tore up spring training. Spring training to me is like calling up pitchers in September and then a hitter hits 350 in September because you're going against a lot of AAA pitchers. I don't believe what happens in April and September. Carson Bench is not ready. And what happened was Mike Tauchman, who was signed, serviceable player, I think that in a perfect world, Bench would have started the season in the minor leagues. But when Tachman went down for 2 months with a knee injury, he had to play. He's been okay defensively. He's made a couple of rookie errors, but he has a strong arm. He has speed, and he brings enthusiasm to the lineup. But he also brings a 140 average into the lineup. You have Simeon, who's still excellent defensively, but a shell of his former self. His bat speed is terrible. It's regressed every year for the last 5. And of course, he's 35 years of age now. Defense still spot on, but doesn't hit the ball hard. He had a very quiet series where I think he hit about 300 in this series, but it wasn't notable because he didn't have a game winner or anything where you could have said, well, maybe he's turning the corner. Alvarez. Francisco Alvarez is sitting about 280 or 290. But you always are ready for the shoe to drop and Alvarez to be out for 6 weeks. And he just doesn't impress me for whatever reason. And defensively, he's taking a step back. You have Brett Beatty, who thought he was going to be the third baseman until the Mets missed out on Kyle Tucker, and 12 hours later ran and signed Bo Bichette, and Bichette was moved to third. Could that have bothered Beatty, thinking all offseason he was the starting third baseman, and now all of a sudden, a kick to the gut possibly? He's hitting 130. You don't have a 280 hitter on this team. 4 or 5 of your starters are hitting under 220. The team has no home run power. Elvin, how are you? Good day, sir. Yes, they are leaderless. They are lifeless from top to bottom. I think that Francisco Lindor, great player. I think there's definitely something going on. I don't know if you were in here. I know someone who works for the Mets, Elvin. And there's a lot going on politically. There's a lot going on politically. Hold on for 1 second. I don't know. Do I think the Mets are a 100-loss team? No. Do I think there are major problems? Well, Cohen went out of his way to say there will not be a captain. That had to bother Lindor because Lindor did everything he could but stand on the field with brochures to become captain of that team. I think that Cohen felt it was a slap to Soto because this is Soto's team. For all you said, it's Soto's team. And he knows Soto wouldn't approve of it. And I don't think if you put the proverbial gun to Cohen's head that he would believe that Lindor is going to be here in 2 years. In fact, I would think Stearns wants to get rid of him now. I just don't know. I'm getting a text here from my friend who works for the Mets. he said that there's definitely going to be moves tomorrow on the off day. I asked him if he thought that Mendy would be fired, and he said no, he doesn't think it's that, but he does feel there's going to be a shakeup. And what a great way to lose today by Michael Conforto doubling, a guy that hasn't had a hit since he left your team. I have to tell you. Well, I'll tell you what I predict. I think the Mets will straighten things out a bit. I don't know if the Mets will make the playoffs. My crystal ball ran out of batteries. I'm not sure. I will tell you they're not going to lose 100 games. But I can't guarantee you they won't lose 90. Because I don't even know how you can dismantle this team now. Like, there's nothing to sell off. There's nothing to sell off. Everyone knows you'd have to get rid of Lindor. What are you going to get from him? Now, look, I think the Dodgers would love to have Lindor. Padres. Padres would love to get out of Fernando Tatis's contract. I think Freddie Peralta, who hasn't been great, 4 ERA, still can't go past 5 innings, throws 90 pitches in 5 innings. He's competitive, and his line would have looked a lot better yesterday if Brazavan doesn't come in. He just missed a strike where they challenged it, and it got overturned, and then a dunk single to center field knocked in 2 of Peralta's runs. If it wasn't for that, it would have looked a lot better. 5 innings, 1 run earned. But he's got a 4 ERA. He's kept you in every game. But an ace is not supposed to only keep you in a game. An ace is supposed to stop the bleeding. McLean has looked excellent. You hope that the pressure doesn't get to him like it did to DeGrom. This looks like Jacob DeGrom light, where he goes out there and knows he can't give up anything. I think McLean is the real deal. I think he's an under 3 ERA guy. I think Peralta will sit around 3.4, 3.5. 2.8 last year was an aberration. He's not a 2.8 ERA guy. But, 3.3. If you're a 3.3 guy, you're a top 15 pitcher. If you're a top 3.3 ERA. The Devin Williams signing, look, he gave up the hit today, blew the lead, and then struck out the side. He's always going to get his strikeouts. That Bender's a great pitch. Can he pitch in New York? I don't know. Under the hood, his stats last year weren't bad. They were pretty much what they were every season. He didn't pitch in very good luck last year. But he's not Diaz. Weaver is Weaver. He's going to look great and then blow up. He's not a premier reliever. If he was a premier reliever, the Yankees, who have bullpen problems, would have signed him. I think the whole season rests on this week. They are on a small homestand against Minnesota, which has surprised everyone with their lineup, and Colorado. Just looking at the schedule now. Okay, we got the Twins in Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Friday, you have the Rockies in. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. You have to go minimum 4-2. If you go 4-2, and you find yourself 5 games under 500, 30 games in, you can work with it because they went 4-2. If you go 5-1, of course, the feeling would be a little better. I don't even think about 6-0. That's not happening. For Mendy to get fired after there have been reports that his job is safe, everyone has the right to change their mind. Okay? And if they asked Cohen Friday if the Mets lose their next 4, and they ask him Saturday morning, well, why was Mendy fired? Well, because when I said it, I meant it, but things have changed in the last week. And I don't think anybody would be mad at Cohen because you said Mendy was going to stay. No, they'd be happy that he changed his mind. Personally, I think, and I hate that, Mendoza, he doesn't deserve Mendy. Mendy's an affectionate term. Win a few games first. Mendoza is terrible with the bullpen. So much so that Adam Ottavino, a former pitcher, said he knows nothing about what he's doing. Now, Adam Ottavino also is a guy that said he'd strike out Babe Ruth. He's got a big mouth. But maybe he did believe he'd strike out Babe Ruth. But you can't argue with him. When Devin Williams hadn't pitched for 8 days and came in and gave up a grand slam the other day, you couldn't find a couple of batters, especially in a losing streak. You're losing anyway. Put him in for an inning. My guess is this. You're never as bad as you look when you're losing. You're never as good as you look when you're winning. Obviously, they're not this bad. They may not be a winning team, but that doesn't mean they're this bad. Okay, you could be a losing team losing 6-3 every night too and 6-4. They've scored probably 14 runs their last 20 games or something. I think the offense will pick up. Generally speaking, 1,000 at-bats usually shows you who you are, okay? You go through the lineup. Marcus Semien, for all the regression, is not a 200 hitter with no power, okay? And someone had emailed me, and I'll get to some of your emails because I had promised to do that on a show before. And this is one of the emails. Could you go through what you think will happen with these individual players? Yeah. I think Semien at the end of the year, if he stays healthy, will be, let's say, 14 homers, 55 RBIs, 240 with sterling defense. Lindor, at the end of the day, you're not hitting 30 homers this year, not stealing 30 bases this year. At the end of the day, I think Lindor, let's say 20 homers, 60 RBIs, 255 average, 20 stolen bases. OPS, about 775. Not going to be a good year for Francisco Lindor. Bo Bichette, let's say 275, 18 homers, 80 RBIs, 35 doubles, an OPS close to 800. He's played okay at third base, actually. He's impressed me a little more than I thought he would defensively, and I think he'll be better than they thought defensively. At first base, whoever's there. Polanco, I think Polanco is hurt. So I don't know. Polanco could miss 2 months. He could miss 6 weeks. Who knows? Brett Beatty, I think you're looking at 240. 14 homers, 50 RBIs, playing all around the field. 730 OPS. Be a little better defensively than he's shown. Luis Robert, if you use him the way you're using him now, you'll get 115 games out of him, 120 games. let's say 20 and 60, hit 250, 20 stolen bases, better than average center field. OPS about 740. Carson Benj, I think Benj will go back down to the minor leagues. Soto, what has he missed? He's going to end up missing, about 17 games? Let's say Soto, 32 homers, 95 RBIs, 290, 30 doubles, OPS 900, on base percentage 425 now because he's going to be walked all the time now. Pitching staff, Peralta, you'll have a 3.6 ERA. Wins don't matter. It'll probably be 14-9, 14-10, something like that. Give you 180 innings pitched, 200 strikeouts. I think McClain, under 3 ERA, 175 innings pitched. Peterson, I think, is a waste. I don't think Senga will be in the starting rotation after another couple of starts. I think the Mets will probably bring up Christian Scott. Scott's only had 4 starts since Tommy John surgery. I think they want to give him 7 or 8 before you'd bring him up into the major leagues. Jonah Tong's not ready. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw Tong in September and not before then. Devin Williams, I think it's going to be a roller coaster. He'll probably save 25 to 30 games, blow 7 or 8 of them. Same thing with Weaver. I wouldn't be surprised if there were a couple of games that Williams just didn't come in to close that Weaver ended up closing. Brooks Raley, he's been solid. He hadn't given up a home run in 2 years. So all of a sudden now it looked terrible. He gave up a home run. Brazoban will take a step back. He's been great. He's left a couple of inherited runners on. He hasn't let any of his own. I think he has a 0 ERA. But he's a 3.5 ERA guy. He shouldn't be an 8th or 9th inning guy. He's fine in the 6th or 7th. Tommy Pham will be released probably by the next homestand. I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if when Soto comes back, if Soto plays a week and they see he's healthy, that Pham gets released. It's hard to believe that this team is so futile. The names and the back of the baseball cards. Look, Soto's going to hit. There's no reason to believe that Lindor won't figure it out. You're used to this slow start. He had a great start last year, first start in 5 years, that he was good. So you would think Lindor will straighten it out unless there are things going on that we don't know about. Personal life, marriage problems, who knows? Illness, you don't know. And you hope. I hope it's nothing like that for him. He's a human being. Do I think Mendoza will finish out the year? No. I think Kai Correa, who was brought in, Kai Correa was on a short list of very hot names to interview for managerial jobs. And I thought it was very interesting in the beginning that he chose the Mets, because I think he knew Mendoza was on the hot seat. And who would you rather manage? A team out west or the Mets? New York. So I think it would be Kai Correa. It wouldn't be Beltran. Beltran's going to go to the Hall of Fame this year. It's going to be a whole crazy thing this summer. It won't be Beltran. It'll be Kai Correa, if it's going to be anybody. I don't think Mendoza will last out the year, though. And I do think if the Mets, You see, you can't even say if they rebound to make the playoffs. Not enough games have gone by. If 80 games had gone by, you say, well, it's going to be tough for them. I don't care how many teams you have ahead of you. If you're 6 out of a wild card spot and you have 140 games left, you know, then if the Mets go 15-5 the next 20 when Soto comes back, right? And they're 3 games over 500 after a quarter of the season, 42 games, and they're 3 out, no one's going to think about this. They're all going to say, remember when we were so worried? Now, do I think that can happen? Yeah. This is a team that was 22 games over 500 June 11th last year, or whenever it was. It's the same team. Well, it's not the same team now, but the same team last year ended up having the worst record in baseball after June, or second worst. So with the talent on this club now, you can't tell me they're a 100-loss team. And if they keep on losing, someone has to be accountable. First of all, the hitting coach, I would think, but you've replaced him. You think Chavez is laughing now? Eric Chavez, the ex-Met hitting coach? It just seems like it's always the Mets who have 7 guys not hitting in the lineup. Doesn't it? Think about it. Not one guy is hitting in this lineup. I'm going to give you the stats. You won't believe it. Team leaders right now. Let's see if this is updated. Okay. I'm going to give you these stats because you just wouldn't believe it. This is after like 23 games. Francisco Alvarez has 4 homers and 5 RBIs. The 4 homers isn't bad. 5 RBIs, he's hitting .273. Okay, he's played 19 games. I'm just looking at his on-base percentage is .385. That's very, very good. It's a small sample size, don't get me wrong. His OPS is .894. Good, small sample size. He has 1 double, 1 extra base hit other than the home runs. Mark Vientos is batting .240, and that's because he had a torrid streak about 3 weeks ago. 2 homers and 6 RBIs. Batting .264. I didn't even realize he was batting that well. He's also struck out 12 times in 53 plate appearances. Marcus Semien. He's played every day, to his credit. A home run and 8 RBIs. He's hitting .216. Francisco Lindor. 5 extra base hits. 2 triples, which he had the first 3 games of the season. He didn't have a triple last year. 2 doubles, a home run, and RBI. 2 stolen bases. Scary thing about Lindor is as well, he struck out 17 times this year. That's a lot for him. Bo Bichette. 3 doubles, a home run, and 9 RBIs. He's struck out 22 times this year. This is a guy that usually strikes out 80 to 90 times a year. He's on pace for about 165 strikeouts. He's a mess. Soto, he's missed, about 15 games already? 14 or 15 games? A homer and 5 RBIs, was hitting .355. He was doing well until he got hurt. Luis Robert Jr. has played 19 games, so the load management, he's played a lot. 2 homers, 7 RBIs, hitting 258. He's got on 372 on base percentage, which is very good. He's struck out quite a bit, but he's also walked quite a bit. Lindor leads the team in runs scored with 12, which is amazing because he's hitting. I didn't realize he was on that much, but the first 8 games of the year, he had walked quite a bit. Because if you look at his stats, that was mostly in the first 15 games of the year, though. Brett Beatty, 3 doubles, no homers, 7 RBIs, hitting 190. Jorge Polanco, he's on a 10-day disabled list. A home run, 2 RBIs, hitting 179. Carson Benj, 150. Tyrone Taylor, 230. Jared Young was doing great. Who would thought he'd be in the lineup, and now he's out for 2 months with knee surgery. Luis Torrens, doing well. MJ Melendez, they brought him up. He's been their best player the last week. Tommy Pham is cooked. There's nothing left in the tank. Ronnie Mauricio added to the 40-man roster. It's just incredible. It's really incredible. I just wanted to see one more thing here. I wanted to go to the fielding stats. Lindor has 1 error. Bichette had 2 errors the first 5 games. He's been playing decent third base. Not a lot of range. Luis Robert, who was supposed to be brought in as a defensive stalwart, his range factor is not good. Carson Benj as well. Brett Beatty's been terrible. Tyrone Taylor, below average. Jorge Polanco, well, he can't move. The Mets have 11 errors with their fielders. I think their pitchers have I know Peralta has 2 errors, about 3 errors. 11 errors in 22 or 23 games is very representable. That's not bad. And then you go to the pitching. Freddie Peralta. He's 1-2, a 4.05 ERA, and he hasn't even been good yet. Less hits than innings. The walks are a bit high, but he's striking out a little more than 1 per inning. A 1.08 whip, which is excellent. Nolan McLean, 2.28 ERA, 23 innings, 10 hits. Walks about 3 per game, more than a strikeout an inning. Clay Holmes has been excellent. That was the best move in the pitching staff that Stearns had made, to sign him and make him a starter. He's 2-2, 1.96 ERA. He's not walking as many guys as he had been walking. Peterson's been a dump by, although he pitched okay today. But Peterson and Senga, after 2 terrific outings, his first 2 starts. Devin Williams got slapped around. Still striking out guys, but Tobias Myers has been great. Sean Manaea, $25 million starter. He's mopping up when you're down 10-1. The thing with Manaea, he's not striking batters out anymore. He doesn't have a put-away pitch anymore. Craig Kimbrell has been good. And Joey Gerber came in, struck out the side, 5 strikeouts in 2 innings, and he went to 15-day IL. So, that's this team. And you just don't know where it's going to lead. My personal opinion. Now let's get to some of these emails. Okay. Hey, Vinster. Oh my God, Vinster. I haven't been called that in a while. Great to see you. Love your broadcast. Thank you. Sherry D. You're a Ranger fan. Are you excited about this upcoming Ranger season? Upcoming meaning next season. Getting more and more excited every day that the Mets lose. Do I think the Mets will be okay? Yeah, I think they will. I don't know if they'll make the playoffs, but I think the Mets. I can't see the Mets totally collapsing. I can see them getting back to 500. It might take them 3 weeks to get back to 500, and then you would hope by Memorial Day, which you'd probably be a third into the season. You'd hope they're over 500 by then and within striking distance. And they figure it out. Vindo, I think. Hi, Mary Mack. How are you? Do I think the Mets will sign Freddie Peralta long term? And do I think McLean is for real? I do think they'll end up signing Freddie Peralta, yes. McLean, yes, I do think he's for real. Last one. Vin, do you think that the Mets will, Bob P., do you think that the Mets will fire Mendoza? Yeah, I do. Generally speaking, the funny thing is, they say, well, it's not the manager's fault. No, maybe not. But historically, when a manager gets fired, a team usually has an uptick, an upswing, because players that want to be regulars start playing hard. They want to win a job. They just feel it's a new lease on life. Do I necessarily think that the Mets, if they fired Mendoza tomorrow, would come out and sweep Minnesota? No. I think they would play with more urgency and more energy. See, a lot of people have asked about Wally Backman. First of all, Wally Backman's 65 years old. The game is changing to younger now. Look, Stearns is under 40. It's a young man's game now. It's not the game that we knew when we were kids. Now, do I think that I don't know if Backman's act would wear well with guys making $50 million a year. I don't think it would wear well. This is a very politically correct society now. His temper tantrums wouldn't go well in the clubhouse. This isn't 1980. Do I think he's a good manager? No doubt in my mind, I think he's a better X's and O's guys than Mendoza. Yeah. Do I think it would translate into wins? I do, but I think there will be problems as well. I don't think he'd be loved in the clubhouse. Not that he has to be. I think you have guys out there that know baseball very well. And you didn't necessarily have to manage before. You had to me, you had to be a player. I think Carlos Beltran would be a very solid choice. There'd be a lot of juice because he's going in as a Met Hall of Fame. A lot of excitement around the team, I think, this summer. And I think that Beltran, if Beltran was named manager tomorrow, there's no doubt in my mind that the team wouldn't feel a little different. First of all, you would generate excitement in the fan base. See, I think what Cohen has to worry about is that it's April 19th and he wants fannies in those seats If they're, in 2 weeks, if they're 12 games out, you're going to have to do something to really inspire the fan base. And that won't be just listen to Mendoza after every game. Well, we hit some balls hard. No one wants to hear it anymore. Don't care. Hit the ball less hard and get hits. Jeff McNeil had one of the lowest velo off the bat and won the batting title. And every ball he hit was 80 miles an hour, 70 miles an hour, as he placed it where they weren't. Mark Vientos, half his outs are over 100 miles per hour off the bat. He has one of the highest velos. When he makes contact, he makes very hard contact, Vientos. He doesn't make contact enough. Conversely, one of the slower swings is Bichette. Lindor's swing has gone down the last couple of years. Luis Robert has a very quick swing, and the ball flies off his bat. But I look, I don't root for anybody to lose their job, but this is a long enough sample size of Mendoza to see that it's just not working. These are totally different players. Half this lineup, this team, most of the regulars are new. Think about it. You have 5 pieces in your lineup that are different players. And they're still not hitting. And they're still terrible with runners in scoring position less than 2 out. Terrible with 2 out. I think this is a team of mercenaries. There's no fluidity. David Stearns, this is a fantasy team that's not living up to their fantasy. These are a lot of names that were put together because they had pretty good resumes, and Stearns was hoping that they'd click. Well, guess what, Stearns? They're not. Now what? You can embarrass yourself a bit after making a statement that Mendoza was pretty safe by firing him tomorrow. First of all, you're not going to fire him on the West Coast. You have to remember, you got to get players. You have to get people in position. When Willie Randolph got fired, when he went out to the West Coast, everyone thought that was terrible. They didn't. You have to get people under contract. You have to fly them out there. It's very hard. Tomorrow would be the day. If he's not fired tomorrow, I think he lasts another month, regardless of what happens. Now, if you're going to keep him, and this has probably, Cohen was on the trip, the road trip. And players know. Players don't give a shit if the general manager's there. They don't care. When the owner is there, players know why, especially this early. Maybe you just meet Mendoza tomorrow and say, look, you're the manager. Pull it together. I'm giving you some time here. You don't have to look over your shoulder. Someone has to take the reins. Maybe Soto. He's the best player on your team. And he has seen this from afar, not being on the field. Different when you're playing and when you're witnessing this garbage from afar. And maybe he just needs to get up there and say, guys, we got to get it together here. This is embarrassing. Would they listen to Soto? What's a future first ballot Hall of Famer? Yeah. Obviously, they're not listening to Lindor. Maybe Lindor is part of the problem. So people are going to tune him out. I don't know. It's just speculation. I'm just throwing shit at the wall, hoping something sticks. Team is a mismatched bunch of mercenaries who, unfortunately, most of them, their better days are behind them. Yeah, if you would have told me that you got Simeon from 4 years ago to Bichette from 3 years ago to Robert coming off the 38 home run year a few years ago, to Devin Williams coming right from Milwaukee, the Weaver who was brilliant a couple of years ago, and you threw that team on the field, then maybe you got something. But Texas couldn't wait to get rid of Simeon. You could have got Simeon for nothing. They would have given you him. Hey, how are you, Dave? I hope you're doing well. Liverpool 2-1. It's great seeing you. How you doing, buddy? Thank you for coming in. Something has to be done, and it has to be done quick. Thank you, David. I would think that there have been players talking to one another. The first thing that should have happened is someone should have gone over to Francisco Lindor if they were close enough, but say, are you okay? Francisco Lindor has made more mental errors the first 3 weeks of the season than he did in a 10-year career. Obviously, something's bothering him. You're a teammate. You don't have to be that close to him. Maybe that will get you closer to him. Say, look, not for anything, man, but are you okay? This doesn't seem like you. What's he going to tell you? Mind your business? He could. But then you know what it is. If it's mind your business, it's personal, which can only be one thing. Maybe it's time for Stearns, who evidently has a close relationship with Lindor and his wife. They're back home off day tomorrow. Maybe you contact Francisco Lindor and you say, what's up? You okay? You know, it appears that there's something off. Maybe it's time for Cohen and Stearns, and this might have happened already, to call Soto and Lindor and say, want to see you guys at my house for lunch. And say, look, guys, you were the two leaders of the team. I don't care who thinks they're the captain. You guys are the two best players on the team. Take the team under your wings. Get us going. Look, Cohen is a businessman. I don't care how much he loves Lindor. If Lindor is not a positive asset, Lindor won't be here. There is no, I believe Cohen, I believe Stearns would want Lindor gone if he could. But then you're admitting that it was a Lindor problem. You have to remember. Then you're admitting that this was a Lindor problem. Already, Lindor had a problem with McNeil. Evidently, doesn't really have a great relationship with Soto, even if that means being cold. 3 all-time Mets that came through the organization were let go. You can't tell me that Lindor didn't have a hand in any of that. So Lindor picked a bad team. You got to give him a little less responsibility. So what do? Do you quietly shop Lindor around? Hey, Patty, do you ask San Diego? You still looking to get rid of Tatis's contract? Well, you got to give us one of your star relievers for us to take it, and we'll give you Lindor. And if it gets out, then maybe Lindor starts playing his ass off. Maybe it embarrasses him enough to light a fire under his ass. Long time no see, Patty. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for coming in. And the most important thing with a cap, maybe now next year for the owners. Hey, Liz, big money. What were you thinking, Liz? About trading Lindor or getting them all together? Quietly shop him. Absolutely, Liz. And you can't, there definitely is a team. I'll never forget when the Mets had a pitching coach, Rick Peterson, very arrogant guy. When the Mets got Carlos Zambrano, the pitcher, he said, I can fix him in 5 minutes. He ended up never doing it. There is definitely a team out there that will say, Lindor needs to change the scenery. Lindor is a very sensitive guy. When Soto was brought in, he's no longer the big star on the team because Soto destroys Lindor. Lindor's a better all-around player, but there's no comparison. And he felt second fiddle, I think, Lindor. And I think that's why he wanted to be captain, to prove that he was still the man. But he wasn't. And I think you quietly shop Lindor, which I don't think Stearns would have any problem doing that. Oh, good for you. I'm so happy for you. My new puppy, if I get him in August, I want to go on vacation first, is going to be named Koopa, a multi-poo. Yeah, Liz, I would shop him, or I would be honest with him and say, Francisco, there's only two things that this looks like. Either there's a problem or you just don't want to be here anymore. Because if you were watching what we were watching, you would say the same thing. What is it? And help him. Who knows? Maybe the guy's having marital problems. I will tell you what I know, Liz. I have a friend who works for the Mets. I know for a fact, not from this guy, from another guy in the organization, that the PR department had put together already a small video about Lindor becoming the captain. And it was squashed at the last minute. I also know for a fact that Brandon Nemo's wife had a problem with Lindor's wife in the family room about politics. And I also know that everyone loved Brandon Nemo's wife. I'm wondering if Francisco's been frozen out a bit, or maybe his wife's been frozen out a bit. Now, just because the wife loves Mamdani, she is entitled to love anybody she wants. That's America. But it's interesting that the three guys that don't like Mamdani were run out of town. That's a little iffy to me. Now, I'm not saying this is definite, but I do know that Nemo's wife was loved by the players' wives. And I personally think that's the problem. I think there's a conflict there. Lindor loves to be loved. Oh, Patty, don't worry about it. Thank you. I'm so happy for you. You didn't change the subject. You're allowed to say anything you want. But I do think it's a Lindor problem, and I do think he's unhappy with the situation. I think maybe some of the wives froze his wife out. Maybe they blame her for Francisco wanting guys traded. It's very, very evident that Alex Cohen's a lib. They have transgenders dancing on the scoreboard during Memorial Day. They had the pride flag up there with the American flag. Is that the time to put the pride flag up during Memorial Day? You couldn't do it another day? And I think that rubs some people the wrong way. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying there's a time and a place for things. Yeah, Liz, it was in the family room. I don't know how passionate the discussion was, but I was told that happened. The guy works in the clubhouse, and he's one of them. And I was told that it just wasn't a good situation there. Absolutely. Hey, Joe. Yeah. Oh my God, I knew a guy, Joe Scala. I worked with him at Merrill Lynch a long time ago. He had a brother. Yeah, it was definitely a political thing. Definitely, Joe. Look, everyone has a right to believe in what they believe in, but you shouldn't want players out of there because of that. Yes, Joe. Listen, the guy that I deal with was very good friends with Omar Minaya. The guy that I deal with never lied. Well, I don't think he lied to me. How would I ever know? But no, he told me this. If you go back to 6 months ago, before this stuff came out, I said this after the offseason. Did you? I worked at 55 Water for Merrill Lynch. 36th floor, cash management accounts. CMA. Joe Gambale was my boss. So, look, you could see why politics shouldn't be involved in anything like this. Like I said, Francisco Lindor's wife might be lovely. She just happens to believe in one thing. But if that thing is causing an issue, that's a problem. And I don't even know how you fix that. I was also told, now, this I don't necessarily believe, from the same person, that because of Francisco Lindor's relationship with the Cohens, players don't trust Lindor because they feel if they say something, it could get back. That would make sense. But generally speaking, you're not talking about the owner. So what could they be saying that they wouldn't trust him for? You know what I mean? But that I would believe. He's been over, him and his wife have been over to Cohen's house with Alex. I believe that. But look, whatever it is, I hope it's not a marital thing, because that would be terrible. They're human beings. That comes first before anything. Yeah, I hope Francisco and his wife are fine. I hope they're happy. I hope this has become blown out of proportion, because if they would have won the World Series last year, no one would be talking about this. But there is something wrong. Look, you have people that have watched Lindor's play, and he's not hurt. It's mental. There is something on his mind. And this is one of your key guys. And you have to work it out. And I think that Soto should be the guy to go over to him and say, yeah, I hope not, Liz. I hope everything's okay. I truly do. Francisco, you okay? Some of these, I'm a player. I see you don't look like yourself. First of all, that would probably get them close. That would bring them closer. I remember the 86 Mets. Darryl Strawberry in 87 punched Keith Hernandez in the face before a team photo in Florida. When I worked at Shout, there were two camps. Keith, Wally Backman, Ed Lynch, Ronnie Darling, and then you had Darryl. Bobby Ojeda was with Keith. And Darryl had Gooden and Mitchell. Mookie kind of stayed by himself. But you could see the factions. There are definitely 2 and 3 different factions. Hey, Bayonet. I'm starting to believe you, Bayonet. I agree. Now, honestly, I was one of the guys who thought Stearns was a good hire. I thought he took a Milwaukee team and built it with limited funds. He's a smart guy. In a perfect world, Bayonet, I'm sorry, I would want Omar back. I worked with Omar. Omar Minaya, before he got the job with Texas, I worked at Shout, and the owner, Jack Stickney, also owned a place called the Jukebox. The Jukebox was open Sunday, Monday, and Tuesdays, and Shout was open Wednesday through Saturday. That was the big club. Jukebox was like a glorified bar. The other place was a 1,500-person club, Shout. And Omar worked at the Jukebox. And before he got the job with Texas, I knew him. Very, very nice guy. I wish they'd get him back. I think Omar would be great. Carlos Beltran, I believe, has a lot of the same attributes that a guy like Omar does. Omar's a class act. He is, Bayonet. He's a very good guy. His son was some basketball player. But really good guy. And even though he's with the Yankees, if he was offered the GM role, he could leave that because it's not a lateral move. It's a step up. I think he'd be great. First of all, you have a very a Latin presence on this team. I think he is terrific with everybody, Omar. He's in his late 60s. Liz, I think Mendoza's probably a great guy, but I think the players have tuned him out. I don't think he's a strong leader. I think he's probably a very nice guy. But obviously, he's not getting anything done. And Mendoza knew he was on the hot seat, and I'll tell you why. Because Mendoza wasn't a Cohen hire. He's the last one around that wasn't a Cohen hire. Wasn't a Stearns hire. And I think Stearns wanted to bring in all his own people. But I do think if it ends up being anybody, it'll be Correa, who was brought in. Well, he's not good with the bullpen. And the thing with managerial decisions, you don't know how much is being really fed down to you from the front office. A lot of these managers, you see, the funny thing is, I think 30, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, managers got way too much credit. And then what happened, like 10 years ago, they got no credit. And now I think you're starting to see they may have gotten too much credit 40 years ago, but they deserve a little more than they've gotten. Because just remember this. I don't care what team you are. You're going to go 50 and 50. You're going to be the worst team in baseball. You're going to win 50 games. It's the other 62. And there are people that motivate people well. Look at I'll give you a perfect example. Let me just read Joe's. I agree, Joe. Oh, okay, Joe. Yeah, I had a friend, Joe and John Scala. They were brothers that worked. Um, Look at Terry Francona. The run differential for the Mets and the Reds, very similar. The Reds are 4 games over 500. The Mets are 7 games under. Last year, Francona got the Reds with the same record into the playoffs over the Mets. When you have now, Francona is one of the 5 best managers in the last 50 years, but when you have a player manager that knows what he's doing, you become the Reds. When you have a manager that doesn't really seem to get it, you get the Mets. There's no doubt in my mind, if Terry Francona were fired today from Cincinnati and came to the Mets Tuesday night, the Mets would be a playoff team. No doubt in my mind. I mean that. And I wouldn't just say that. No doubt in my mind. So if that's the case, that means that there's something wrong with the managing. Bayonet. I keep on saying Bayonne. I'm sorry. Bayonet. I agree. Stearns didn't want Alonso when they signed him to the 1-year contract. That was Cohen. There was the fan appreciation day at Citi Field, and everybody was booing Cohen. When are you bringing Pete back? And they signed him a day later. But no, Liz, I don't know if you're talking about Francona. No doubt in my mind, if Francona became the manager Tuesday and brought out the lineup cards for the Mets would make playoffs. Mendoza's over his head. And here is something that I want you to think about. There have been rumors that Aaron Boone was going to get fired for a long time. Right? Why did the Yankees let Mendoza go? If Mendoza was so valued by the Yankees, why did they let him go? You got to wonder that too. Maybe they saw what we're seeing now. Now, I had one email. I wasn't going to say anything, but I will. Someone said, yeah, all the Mets do is take Yankee cast-offs. Well, didn't you take Gooden and Strawberry a few years back? They were better players than any of the players the Mets ever took from you other than Soto. So there's my answer to that one. Sometimes you can't nip it in the butt because you don't know what the problem is, Liz. Or you have multiple problems. That's a problem as well. Sometimes there's just multiple problems. You don't know what to do. Look, Tommy Pham left the Mets. Now, Pham has a big mouth and said, no one works on that team. The work ethic is terrible on that team. That's what Pham said when he left the Mets. Adam Ottavino, a pitcher, said Mendoza doesn't know what he's doing with the bullpen. He ruined everybody. Guys are getting operations left and right because of their usage with Mendoza. Now, these are 2 players that came out. You got Eric Chavez, who was fired as a hitting coach and said it's a joke and a shit show over there. This is all stuff that's real. Now, I don't think Soto's the problem. Look, Soto doesn't want to be your friend. Soto wants to come do his work and leave. He has a family. He's a religious guy. Soto doesn't want to be your best friend in the clubhouse. There's nothing wrong with that. He's all work. He puts up the same numbers every year. Soto's not a problem. So some guys just don't have a personality to be rah-rah. And I will tell you another thing that the guy told me from the Mets. Soto had a very big problem with last year when the Mets were knocked out of a playoff spot. And then they had gone back and forth. This was a few weeks before the end of the season. I don't know what game it was, but someone cleared the bases with a double to take the lead against the Mets, and Lindor, while the guy's standing at second, joking around with him. The guy just cleared the bases and probably won the game where you needed to win that game, and Lindor's joking around with him at second base. And I can't imagine a guy like Soto not having a problem with that. Now, is that nervous energy when Lindor just laughs? Maybe. But, he's striking out with the bases loaded. He walks away laughing. You know what? Even if that's your reaction to being disappointed, then stop it. Because it doesn't look good. It looks like you don't give a shit. You're in New York. You're not on the Kansas City Royals here. Stop laughing when someone just cleared the bases and took the lead from your team. Stop joking around with Manny Machado and letting him lift you up like an idiot, like you're 15 years old. This is why you're not the captain of the Mets. If you're wonder why they didn't name me captain, there's two things that I noticed. And I'm not in the clubhouse with you. Yeah, Liz, that's a bad look. That's a real bad look. Do you think Soto would be doing that? One thing I know O'Neill seemed selfish. I know it seemed like he'd be a baby when he popped out. I believe he cared. There was never a time when I didn't believe O'Neill cared. There was a time when it would get on my nerves too, the way he acted. But I never doubted that he cared. I never doubted that Pete Alonso cared. Never doubted that. Never doubted that Brandon Nimmo cared. Yes, Liz, absolutely. Lindor's very insecure. Lindor wants to be loved. And that's why it's killing him that he wasn't named captain. When Soto said, to me, Marte's the captain of the team, that killed Lindor. Probably would have helped if they did sign Marte, because he could have at least called a team meeting and people would have listened. I don't think people are listening to Francisco Lindor, to be honest with you. Now, I think Soto could maybe come in after being on a DL for 3 weeks and say, guys, we got to put this together. The season's getting old fast. Soto, you'll listen to. He's an MVP type of player. But I agree, Liz. Lindor is very insecure, wants to be loved by everybody, and that is part of the reason why he's not listened to. He's very disingenuous. He comes off like a phony. And I think that's part of it. I think you need a couple of... Now, Tommy Pham is very abrasive, but Tommy Pham's not good anymore. It's very hard to call a team meeting when you're hitting 120, because people say, who the hell are you? You stink. You have to be a decent player. That's another thing. But I get the feeling this team isn't very close. I get the feeling that Some of them don't trust Francisco Lindor. I think some of them probably don't want to get involved in all the nonsense with the politics. And that's a problem. That's a problem. Do you know that Cohen wanted to be the Dodgers of the East? As crazy as it ever was under the Wilpon regime, you never had this. Hey, Sal, you never had this with the Wilpons. The only thing you had with the Wilpons is they were cheap. And the Wilpons weren't cheap. What happened was the Wilpons lost millions of, it wasn't that they lost so much with Madoff. What happened was they spent thinking it's kind of like you buying $1 million house, thinking you have a $300,000 a year job. You get fired, and now you're making $50,000 a year, and you got to pay that mortgage. That's what happened with the Wilpons. It's not that they lost so much with Madoff. It's just the money they thought was going to be coming in wasn't coming in anymore, and they spent like they were going to have that earned. That's what happened. But you never had this with the Wilpons. I don't think they'd allow it. They wouldn't allow this political nonsense. Yeah, something was, Liz. I agree with you. And look, kudos to him. He had that hamate bone injury is an annoying injury. And he came back a week and a half before he was supposed to. Started the season. Give him credit. I'm not saying he doesn't care about playing. I just don't. I think what you said is true. I think that he's insecure. Sal, I totally agree with you. And I do believe, Sal, if Mendoza's not gone tomorrow, then he's got a month here. Because sometimes you wait. It's like breaking up with a girlfriend. You wait for the spot. Tomorrow's the perfect spot to call him in and say, we're going to go in a different direction. And Mendoza really couldn't even blame you. You don't have to do this, but you can say, look, over the last 115 games, you're 35 games on the 30 games on the, can't blame me here. Yeah, well, I think Soto was a lot more comfortable this year opposed to last year. He certainly was. They said that he seemed much more comfortable. But Sal, I totally agree with you. But tomorrow is the perfect day. It doesn't make any sense to have him manage Tuesday and Wednesday. You lose both those games and you fire him Thursday. That doesn't make sense. If you're going to fire him tomorrow. Fire him on the off day. This way you could hastily have a conference and call your new guy in. Yeah, I think there's something going on, Liz, with Lindor. And I have a feeling it has to do with the wife, to be honest with you. I know I'm unfair saying this not being close to the team. I just think too much has gone on with that wife to not think it's something with that. Her coming out, backing Mamdani, all of a sudden, Nemo's wife, it was Nemo wouldn't talk, and then all of a sudden his wife had an argument with her. It was about politics. Too much. And I think that, look, I'm not saying this happened. This is all for fun here, right? But who knows? Maybe Lindor said to the wife, I was going to be captain until you started all the bullshit. I'm just, let's throw things at the wall. I might be totally off. But maybe he's arguing with her. Maybe he said, you got involved with all this, and not that it's nonsense. But look now. I lost my standing with the team. That sounds, if I had to come up with an answer without knowing any real facts, that's what I would come up with. Like, I was going to be captain of this team. You came up with all this stuff, and I'm totally on board with you. I like him too, but you shouldn't have brought it in here. That is more likely than him upset because his hammock bone hurts. And that's what I believe. And I do believe, as much as Do you think the Soto playing in the World League and anything to do with his injury? I don't think they should be playing at all. I agree with you, Bayonet. And they should forfeit their. If you go on a DL because of that and you get hurt there, you forfeit your. You don't get paid, but you can't prove it was from there. Um, Look, it's hard to tell him not to, but look, Stearns is a businessman, and as much as he likes Lindor, I'm sure not Stearns. I'm sorry. I'm sure Cohen has fired people that he liked. You have to be in the position he's in with hedge funds and stuff. You got to be a badass. You have to make some very, very tough decisions. And he's 70 years old. Don't think he hasn't. And if one of the decisions is eat the money and fire David Stearns, he will do it. Now, I do believe Cohen will give you every opportunity because I think Cohen, if he looks in the mirror, he doesn't want to have any doubt. I think he wants to be able to look in the mirror in the morning and say, I made the right choice. Never once say, did I? That's what I believe. Right. Business is business. And I believe that, look, Stearns put this team together. Who are you gonna blame? Stearns put his fingerprints all over this team. This is what he wanted. Who pays for this? If you're going to fire Mendoza, you have to fire Stearns. Because think about it. If you're firing the manager, you have to fire the guy that gave him all these players, don't you? That's not this. Well, I'll tell you this much. I believe right now, if the Mets had McNeil, Alonso, Diaz, I think they'd have one or two more wins. I totally agree with you, Sal. The only thing that I believe now is baseball's become a younger game. Wally's been out of baseball a long time. And, what's Wally, 67? He's probably 67. How old is Wally Backman? He's 66. He's also had some issues off the field. And I think that would be Beltran's position to turn down. I think they would offer it to Carlos first. And I don't know if he would turn it down, Carlos. Yes, Liz. Very hard to fire a POBO, a president of baseball operations or GM during the regular season unless something happened. Unless there was a, God forbid, an arrest, something happened. Very hard you just generally wouldn't do that because you got to remember, you're going to have in a couple of months, you have the trade deadline, you have stuff going on, the draft. You don't want to be underrepresented. Manager, look, when managers are fired, it's proven that teams generally get a boost right away from it. It's like when a top player in the NBA goes down. Usually you don't feel it the next game. It's after 2 or 3 games because usually people raise their game. They get opportunities. They raise their game. In the long term, you miss that player, but not the first game or two. And that's what I think. I think Wally, first of all, yeah, I do, Liz. I think Beltran probably could. He's a very, very astute business guy and baseball guy. Yeah, I do. I do. I think that absolutely, I do. Baseball's changed now. You don't necessarily need in the dugout, and he was in the dugout with Houston. See, that's the thing, Liz. You don't know. Very possibly, Beltran has a cushy job. Is going to the Hall of Fame this summer. Might not want the whole deal with managing and then have that weekend at the Hall of Fame. You know, I think Backman would take it, but is Backman too old school? Backman screaming at a guy like Soto for not running down the first baseline. I don't know how good that would go. When Soto's, in 1 year makes more than you'll be worth your whole lifetime. I don't know how that will go. I always thought that Keith Hernandez would have been a good manager, but his health has deteriorated. Yeah, Sal. Yeah, I agree with you. But that was also 23 years ago. Baseball, since then, you have a pitch clock. You have that pitch recognizing system now. The extra innings are different. Baseball's changed a lot in 23 years. Wally also hasn't been around the team. They might want someone that knows the personnel. And I totally think that Mendoza probably knew when Carlos Beltran was brought in and Kai Correa, who was very well thought of. I better get off to a decent start. This was talked about all during the offseason. I don't know if you listened to any of these sports stations or YouTube or whatever, but this was talked about. I agree, Sal. That I agree with. If Mendoza got off to a tough start, and this isn't even a tough start. This is an organizational pit where you're doing things now that an organization that has been a laughing stock before, you're making it more of a laughing. Like you're out doing things that this organization had for 60 years. It's like pretty scary. Joe Girardi, I don't think he's the answer. But I agree, Sal. Backman knows his stuff. He's a great X and O guy. But he is a guy that if in the 8th inning, down 4-1, if Soto doesn't, well, maybe not Soto because he's coming off a quad injury, but if Soto was okay and didn't bust it down first base, Backman would get in his face. See, Backman's a guy that would bench Soto. I don't know if you want that temperament. But there needs to be a new sheriff in place. We thought we had it with Cohen. Obviously, money can't buy you everything. Harvard educations can't buy you everything. Because Stearns probably is one of the top 2 people in any room he sits in. I'll give him that. Joe Girardi, well, if it's Stearns choosing the GM, charging the manager, in charge of that, it won't be an older guy. The head of the pitching lab now, hitting coaches are all in their 30s. Stearns believes in younger minds. He feels baseball has changed. And I don't think he'd hire Joe Girardi. I don't. I think that it would have, if it was going to be an older guy, it would have to be a guy like, here's a guy that's too old, Bruce Bochy. Someone like a Bruce Bochy, a Clint Hurdle. Well, Bochy's in his 70s. Clint Hurdle's probably in his late 50s. Thank you, Emmanuel. A guy like Clint Hurdle. I could see that being a Stearns guy. Kai Correa. And I think part of the reason Kai Correa was brought in here was to help. He's great with fielding, to help Bichette, and also in case he has to replace Mendoza. He did manage a week for the San Francisco Giants. Well done. When I agree with you. I agree with you. I will tell you this much. Well, well done. The time to fire Mendoza is tomorrow. It makes no sense to have him come back tomorrow. Mets go 2-8 and fire him May 10th. That makes no sense. And I will tell you this much. Will Salmon, who's a terrific beat reporter who has really elevated himself. And shout out to Wardy. He's a kid, but really, really on the top of his game. He does a great job, Wardy. I love listening to him. I've reached out to him a couple of times. I'm a life and health coach, and I know he had talked about having anxiety. And if he ever needed me, I had told him to contact me. Oh, hey, Ira. Wardy, terrific. Talking baseball with Rob. These are channels that I really enjoy. And I think they would all agree. And they don't watch me, but it makes no sense to fire Mendoza any other time but either tomorrow or right before Memorial Day weekend. I agree, Sal. I totally agree with you. Now, I don't know if he was spoken to, Mendoza. I don't know. I would think it would be cruel to have him take the trip back east with the team and not knowing and be nervous as hell. So he either got a pat on the shoulder, you're okay. Will Salmon, who seems to be very plugged into the Mets, has said that he believes Mendoza is safe. Will Salmon is a guy that I really respect, young guy. And he really has elevated his status with some of the great stuff he's had during the offseason and all that. I would think he's getting that from somewhere. It would lead me to believe that Mendoza has been told that he's safe for now. So if I had to guess off Will Salmon's report and Wardy's report as well, I would guess that Mendoza is not going to be fired tomorrow. But if you're giving him a vote of confidence, that's not for this homestand. That's okay. We're not going to fire you now, but you better go 7-3 in the next 10 games. That's not happening either. So I would think, unless they went on a 20-game losing streak, I would think that Mendoza's safe until Memorial Day weekend if he is not fired tomorrow. Oh, Liz, very possible. The thing with 11-game losing streaks is when you have an 11-game losing streak and you have two guys, Peralta and McLean, and you also have Holmes, who has been a top 10 pitcher this year over his first 3 or 4 starts. Very hard. The only possible way, if I told you that the top 3 starters on this team had ERAs of 4, and the 4 was only because of 2 inherited runners the other day, or it would have been 3. 1.8 Holmes and 2.5 McLean. If I told you the 3 starters have done that, you would say, how did we lose 11 in a row? How? McLean has gone 5 innings 3 times. Holmes went into the 7th. He had never done that before. Sanger even went into the 7th in one of the starts. And if I would have told you we're going to get that the first month of the season, but we're going to have an 11-game losing streak, you would have said, how? What, did you get shut out every game? Well, yeah, we did. We scored 3 runs in 6 games. I agree with you, Sal. that probably is being leaked from Stearns, and I think Stearns knows if Mendoza goes, he's next. Think about it. Who's next in line if Mendoza goes? Stearns. So at least have someone buffering you where he can get fired first. Oh, well, the boos are going to be terrible. This team is going to get unmercifully booed. The only guy that's going to get cheered is McLean. Only guy. Everyone else will get booed. And God forbid, Tuesday night, you're down 3-0 in the first inning. It's not going to be fun. That's why if you're going to fire Mendoza, you have to fire him tomorrow. I don't think it's going to happen because Will Salmon I respect and he believes it's not happening. But you have to fire him tomorrow because then you're stuck with him for a month. Because I'm going. I have season tickets. Well, I have the week pass where not the weekends, but I have like 40 games. I haven't been to one game yet. I taught on opening day. I had to teach, so I couldn't go to that game. They're going to make, if I sell these tickets, they're going to make me pay them to take them. But, tomorrow's your only day you could fire him. Because also you have to remember, you're dealing with adults here. Cohen is not going to tell Mendoza you have some time to straighten it out and then fire him because they lost another game. How much is time to straighten it out? Well, first of all, you want your regular lineup out on the field for at least 10 to 15 games. Because very, very fairly, he could have said, look, we were 7-4 and Soto went down. Which is true. And there's definitely a trickle effect with that, with him going down. But he's not going to get pitched to now. Polanco's on a disabled list. Simeon hasn't hit. First of all, Carson Bench should be sent down. Carson Bench isn't ready. I'll be there too. Well, I'm going to go Tuesday night. If you're going, hit me up on I'm going to give you my my email. Hit me up. I'll meet you over there. We'll get a hot chocolate because it's going to be like 11 degrees. There's my email. Hit me up. Definitely. I'd love to meet you over there. We could boo together in stereo. So, yeah, see, this is what disappoints me too. Isn't it sad that I'm disappointed because if you miss the tax filing date tomorrow of firing Mendoza, you're stuck with him because you're not going to fire him next week. Tomorrow's the day. And they might give him time to have a lineup. Yeah, Benj isn't ready. And it's unfair to put him in a lineup like this. Beltran, yeah, right? I used to have a Beltran shirt, but definitely hit me up. I'd love to meet you over there. I will tell you this much. I really hope Lindor's marriage is fine. I do. I hope the women aren't freezing her out, regardless of who she wants to vote for. We're talking about adults here. I hope there's not illness. There's nothing wrong with admitting you made a mistake. Problem is Stearns, he gives you that smug smile. Now, look, I don't think he's trying to be a wise ass, Stearns. I think that's just his smile. It's like a protective kind of thing. He says a lot of nothing when he talks. And I think that's just a nervous kind of tick thing. I don't think he's trying to be smug and arrogant. But I think if Stearns came out and said, if Stearns before the homestand has and I'm curious what you think, well done. Stearns, before the homestand, has a press conference. And I think it's too early now because then fans won't come. They'll think it's the team's dead. But if you say, look, I deserve some criticism here too. And I think Mendoza deserves. I put the team in the clubhouse that he fills out the lineup card for. I have to take some of this responsibility too. Whatever it is, we'll all get through it together. Let's just be patient. I know it's hard to be patient, but just give us a little time. I think if he said that tomorrow, instead of smirking and this and analytics and this bullshit and that bullshit and Soto's day to day, I think if he just came out and spoke to the fans and said, you have every right to boo me. I've done a terrible job. The bottom line is I put these players on the field. And just give me a little time. Give us a little time to get totally healthy. And yeah, Liz, I think it is a nervous reaction with Stearns. I think he really thinks about before every word he's thinking about what he's going to say because he wants to be guarded. I think if Stearns came out and said that, you might still want him fired, but you'd say, well, look, he fessed up at least. I give him that. He was a man. Still don't want him to be the pobo of this team, but all right. Yeah, good. He knows he fucked up. Because Mendoza is a solid dude. Mendoza's not going to say, not for anything. I didn't put these guys in my clubhouse. I didn't build this team. I didn't sign a guy that can't walk. I didn't sign two guys that never played the position. But he'd never say that. I think he's a stand-up guy. And Cohen, Sal Cohen signed Soto. Stearns didn't sign Soto. Do you really think Stearns gave Soto $800 million? Well, what happened with Minaya, Iglesias, Severino, Stearns wanted to rebuild. And he wasn't going to spend any money that year. And just everything he touched went right. That's what happened. Stearns wanted his handprint on this whole team. So he didn't sign Corbin Burns. He didn't sign any of the big guys. He bargain bin contracts. It ends up Minaya and Severino ended up really outperforming. And the Mets came within a game of going to the World Series. That's what happened. So he couldn't rebuild last year. You can't actually play the Dodgers tougher than the Yankees did and then pull apart the team like he did this year. You'd say, what are you, crazy? You almost went to the World Series. Why are you dismantling the team? It would have looked stupid. He never expected the Mets to have that great year 2 years ago. Yes, Liz, he needs to say, look, I've done a terrible job here. But I'm under contract. I don't sleep well at night either. Don't think for a second that I'm happy about this. And don't think for a second that any of these players just don't think about this. Just give us a little time. Give us a little time to get totally healthy. Don't make an excuse that the third best player in the major leagues, Judge and Ohtani, Soto's the third best player, third best hitter. Don't make an excuse he's missed 15 games, which he's missed 14. Don't make those excuses. Say, we definitely missed Juan in the lineup. It's a trickle-down effect. But, you have every right to be angry. But just give us a little more time. If he said that, I might still want him gone. It's like your girlfriend coming to you and saying, I owe you this. I cheated on you. I'm wrong. You have every right to throw me out of here right now and tell me, curse me out every name under the sun. I wanted you to hear it from me and not someone else. I was wrong. I'm sorry. You might still break up with her, but you'll say, oh, at least she came to me. If Stearns just comes out and says, yeah, I've screwed up with this lineup big time. Yeah. Because he looks ridiculous. When you let Pete Alonso go because you want better defense at first, and your two guys that are playing first, the first 22 games, have never played first base, you look like an idiot. It's not arbitrary where, well, I think Polanco, who has played 6 years at first base, he hasn't. I think he's a better defensive first baseman than Pete. You might not agree, but I think he is. So I got rid of Pete. I want Polanco there. But you got rid of Pete because he can't defend. So you put someone there that's never played the position. And then you go on and on about run prevention. You make it known that Vientos, who is not a third baseman, there's a problem with his defense. So you put Bichette there, who is not even a good shortstop. Generally speaking, if you move from short to third, you were a decent shortstop and you slowed down because of age. Your range went. And Bichette has surprised me. There's no doubt in my mind that Bichette's working very hard. Bichette's also ready for a free agent year. But you could tell he's improved from the first series that the Mets played to now. I've seen him make a couple of nice plays. Hey, BJ, we were talking about Francisco Lindor. I think there's a big problem. I think there's a big personal problem with him. I don't know what it is, but something's going on. That has nothing with, to me, that has nothing to do with baseball. Mental errors are different. When you don't know in the first inning how many outs there are, you're thinking of something else. You've been on the field 7 minutes. But I think that, unfortunately, and I don't like to see anybody lose their job. Everyone has to, has a family to support and all that. I think the Mets, are wasting a very good opportunity. I agree, BJ. The Mets have an opportunity tomorrow to fire Mendoza. If you don't do it tomorrow, up until Labor Day, up until Memorial Day weekend, you look like an idiot. Tomorrow's the day to do it. If you're not doing it tomorrow, don't do it next Wednesday because you'll look stupid. Don't do it a week from Friday. You look stupid. Because the only difference is going to be if you fire him in 2 weeks, that's because things went worse. Because if you don't fire him tomorrow and he goes 9-5 the next 2 weeks, you're not firing him. It's not like you're waiting for a manager to free up from a contract you're negotiating. So it doesn't make sense. So if you don't fire him tomorrow and you fire him in 2 weeks, that's because he went 2-10 again. And that means now you're 15 games out and the season's over. So you are really taking a big chance by not seizing the day to fire him tomorrow. Because at least you have a shot of turning the season around. If you fire him in 2 weeks, it's because things didn't get better. And if things don't get better, they're going to be 11 out in 2 weeks, not 7, with 7 teams ahead of them. Still early. So why are you waiting? To me, it's a big gamble that you won't fire him tomorrow because you really believe things are going to turn around. Well, over the last 100 games, you have the 4th worst record in baseball. Things haven't turned around since last June, with the 3rd best player in the sport on your club coming off an MVP type year last year. And the year before that, if Ohtani wasn't in the league, Lindor would have won the MVP. So you've had, in the last 2 years, 2 MVP type seasons, and you still have won nothing. So fire him tomorrow and give yourself a chance to win. Because if you fire him in 2 weeks, I guarantee you're 10 or 11 out. Because if he goes 500 in the next 15 days, you're not firing him. Because you're not going to fire him over a 5-5 or a 7-7 record when you didn't fire him coming from an 0-11. That's the problem. They are taking a big risk on a guy that over 2/3 of a season is 20 games under 500. I don't get it. Right, Liz, that's what I'm saying. If you fire him in 2 weeks, that's because things got worse, which means you're further out in the standings. There is no reason for me to believe. See, this isn't this year. This is since last June. Since last June, the Mets are 25 games under 500. That's a pretty big sample size. And your roster construction is terrible if Soto's out of the lineup and you lose 11 straight. You still have put this roster together terrible. Because the Yankees probably aren't losing 11 straight if Judge misses the next 11 games. You have 3 pitchers right now. 2 of them have ERAs under 2.75 year starters. One has an ERA of 4, and the only reason that is because of his last start where Brazovan gave up 2 inherited runners, or it would have been 3-2 your ERA. And you've lost 11 straight. And in 22 games, you're 8 games under 500. With a pitching staff that 3 of the 5 have ERAs very competitive and have gone 5, 6, and 7 innings. And you got 2 lucky starts from Senga, who went 6 and 7 and pitched brilliantly his first 2 starts. And you're still 8 under with an 11-game losing streak. How is that possible? How is it possible that nobody's hitting? Someone has to be blamed. Now, if you didn't fire the hitting coach 4 months ago, you could have fired him now, but you can't even do that because you look like an idiot. You just fired one. They are just, it's systemic. And I'm sure Chavez, the ex-hitting coach, who's laughing his ass off now, says, you see, it wasn't me. It's the whole system. And this is Uncle Stevie, who was going to save us and make us the Dodgers of the East. Can I tell you something? I want the Wilpons back. You wouldn't have this stuff going on the scoreboard with the people dancing all over the place, men with lipstick on. You wouldn't have that going on now. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm saying It doesn't belong on the screen on Memorial Day weekend when you had veterans up or Veterans Day. You can't keep on worrying about being politically correct when you suck. Absolutely, BJ. And some of these games were winnable. Here. The Mets lost 2-1. Very winnable game. They lost 4-2 yesterday. Winnable game. They gave up 12 runs. The wind was blowing out 900 miles an hour. They couldn't score more than 4 runs. They lost 8-2. They lost another 2-1 game. They lost 4-0. They lost 1-0. If the Mets would have scored 4 runs, they'd be 7-3 the last 10. If they would have scored 3 runs, they would have been 5-5. What are we doing here? And then you have, well, you can't get mad at Pete Crow Armstrong tripling and he's shoving it to you. Conforto today is, it just makes sense that Conforto beat you. But, there comes a time when you just have to say, look, we have to rip this apart. Even at my age, when you have a team that you know is going to suck, but you're building and you can find a player or two that you'll start rooting for because you're going to lose 100 games, and you hope that one of your players makes the All-Star game because it really is good if he makes it and your team stinks. If you told me, I'll give you a perfect example. I'm a big Ranger fan. The Rangers have about an 11% chance of getting the first pick of the draft. I was rooting against them. Never did I think when I was a kid, when I didn't know about draft positioning and you're better off having the worst record, never would I have thought that I would root against my team. If Stearns put a letter out, you can't do it tomorrow, but if it was in July, if you're 25 games under, and he said, look, we're going to reassess and we feel we need a rebuild, I'd be all for it. And I'd probably still go to some games, not as many. I'd be all for it. Than to see this nonsense. I would totally be for losing 100, then losing 92, then going 500. I'd be for it. I might not be alive, but I'd be for it. Because there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a fucking oncoming train that's going to smash you. But this, just plugging in players for the sake of plugging them in. You could have, look at LeBron James when he first put his team together years ago, right? When he went to Miami, they didn't win anything. Why? Because that doesn't guarantee you anything. You could have 2 movie stars that are the most handsome guy in the world and the most beautiful woman in the world. And you know what? They might not like each other. It don't work. It should work. They're perfect. Don't work. Just because you put players that have numbers on the back of a baseball card and they all have numbers from every different team they've been on, that doesn't mean they're going to work on yours. You need a little stability. Stearns has shown no stability. Stearns wasn't here when Alonso was drafted, when Nemo was drafted, so he didn't give a shit. You know who he's excited about? You know who his first draft choice was? Carson Bench. And that's why Bench is playing every day hitting 140. That's Stearns' guy, Bench. That was his first major decision when he came to the Mets. He drafted Carson Bench. What a shock that he's in the lineup. He didn't owe anybody anything. He didn't know any of these players. Now, you know who he likes? Freddie Peralta. Why? Because he drafted Freddie Peralta. He traded for Freddie Peralta. Freddie Peralta was with Seattle when he was with Milwaukee, and he traded for Freddie Peralta and then traded for him again now. Obviously, he likes Freddie Peralta. So if any pitcher is going to be given a long-term contract, if it's anybody, it's going to be Freddie Peralta, because Stearns already acquired him twice. So you know how much he thinks of him. He doesn't give a shit about Pete Alonso or Nemo or any of these guys. He had nothing to do with them. He has no allegiance. He wants to build a team in his image. Unfortunately, this is his image. And it's not a very, very handsome image. We're in a pickle, Bayonet. Ranger fan, Sal, yeah. My prediction? Rangers get the number 2 pick. They're assured no worse than number 4. I don't think they get the first. They'll get the number 2, which, good draft. But you know something? You can talk until the cows come home. The bottom line is this. And I don't root for people to get fired. I was unemployed once. I had a small kid at home. It's scary. I would think Mendoza has enough money in the bank to get through a little time, and they'll pay him if they fire him. The Mets are taking a very big gamble, thinking everything's going to be okay. Because that's the only reason they're not firing Mendoza, is because they think things are going to turn. And the only reason they're doing that is because you're 23 games in. Cleveland lost 15 of 16 games last year and made the playoffs. He should, Sal. I don't think Mendoza's going to get fired tomorrow. I think listen, you know, these aren't 11-year-old little leaguers playing here. They can't possibly, well, I would have said they couldn't possibly lose 11 games in a row. The law of averages are going to turn. A couple of those hard hit balls are going to start falling. Bichette hit a 110-mile-an-hour ball to center field that gets down. Different game. I don't think he's going to be fired. I think, right, Liz, also because Soto's been out. I think Soto will come back. I think they'll start playing better. But this offense is too hot and cold. And if you look at the Mets the last 2 years, once the Mets start winning, they knock off 9 of 11. When they lose 9 of 11. So there's no doubt in my mind that once the Mets turn the corner, they're going to go on a 14-6 streak, 15-5. No doubt in my mind that they will, if in fact they do start winning, because the Mets, that's been their MO for 2 years. They're either very hot or very cold, very inconsistent. So when the Mets finally turn the corner, they're owed the baseball gods owes them a few wins. I would not be surprised if Memorial Day weekend, if the Mets were 500 or a game over. And generally speaking, if you're in the playoffs Memorial Day weekend, you're in the playoffs in September. It just works out that way. Memorial Day weekend is really that point. Um, Now, if they're 15 games out at the trade deadline, I think they'll trade Freddie Peralta. I think they'll gut the team because they could always sign Freddie Peralta. Stearns has a history of signing him twice. They could tell Freddie Peralta, we're going to give you a shot to go win somewhere. You just got to hope that he don't like it there. What happens if he goes somewhere, wins, and now wants to stay? But they do have pieces they can unload. They could trade Bichette. Because even if Bichette's hitting 240, people remember his at-bat in the playoffs in the World Series last year. People know what you're capable of. See, it's when Pete Alonso comes up, he's hitting 220. But you know he could mistake his way into a 470-foot home run. You don't get that feeling with Polanco. So someone would take Bichette off your hands and give you something for him. Peralta, certainly. Can you imagine a starting pitcher like Peralta? If he's doing well at the trade deadline, what you can get for Peralta, you see what you can get for starting pitching. Get a lot. I personally think, I've said this on here, my feeling was Stearns did the exact opposite of what he did year one when he took a shot with all B-level guys and they just happened to do well and they made the playoffs. I think Stearns may have purposely gotten pieces that he could sell off. Guys with expiring contracts where at the trade deadline, if a team is one starter away, you know what you can get for Freddie Peralta? Think about it. You know what you can get for Bo Bichette? A middle of the lineup hitter with his playoff experience that has proven to you maybe that he could play third base now. You know what you could get for Francisco Alvarez? I have a feeling that there was a method. You see, Liz, huh? I'm not so stupid. I may not get a lot of viewers. I have a feeling Stearns all along had in his mind, I'll sign a mercenary team this year because I got lucky 2 years ago. If we make the playoffs, great. If we're out of it, I can really accelerate our rebuild. Think about what they could get. If you trade Bichette, Mauricio plays third the rest of the year. Jonah Tong's ready at Peralta. If you trade Peralta, you have Christian Scott and Jonah Tong take those starts. 15 starts left at the All-Star break. Do you know what you can get for Peralta? I'm sure they would, Sal. And I would think they'd be willing to take on some of his salary as well, depending on what you get back. The more you'll give me back, the more I'll pay his salary. But I wouldn't be surprised if Stearns had on his mind, it's a crapshoot. We don't know what the cap is going to be next year. And teams aren't going to trade for a guy that has 3 years left when there might be a strike looming and they don't know what the cap is going to be. The Mets have all expiring contracts. Peralta, you just got to pay him for this year. Bichette, you could pick up the option. 1 more year. Tyrone Taylor. Polanco, if he gets on a heater. Marcus Semien. A good veteran presence, Gold Glove still. Veteran on the bench. I wouldn't be surprised if Stearns said, we'll take a shot. If it doesn't work out, we have a hell of a lot of good pieces for teams that are desperate. And you know what? Do you know what teams are willing to pay for a starting pitcher of Peralta's ilk? Do you know what you can get for a guy like Freddie Peralta for a team that didn't think they'd be in it and now they're fighting for a playoff spot? A team like Oakland, the A's, who are never anywhere, and all of a sudden they have a terrific lineup and they have no pitching. And they're right on the wild card, and you offer them Freddie Peralta. A lot of good young players in that team. You see where I'm going with this? Yes, Sal. Maybe Stearns isn't that stupid. He saw an opportunity to get a lot of guys with one-year contracts where no one's going to squawk at taking them on because you just have to pay them for this year. But a guy like Weaver, Brazaban, think of it the way I'm thinking of it. I was a stockbroker. I was a business guy. I have a master's in mathematics. I know my math. Think about Stearns saying, look, no one's probably beating the Dodgers this year. Might be able to steal a game, but we can't beat them. But we have to put on a good show in New York. Got to fill seats. Steve Cohen is buying a casino. We need to do good. So this is what I'll do. We may have to rebuild. Let me put a team together that the back of the baseball card says we should win 85 to 90 games. These are one-year contracts. So no one is going to be scared off from taking this player to try to win a World Series. We could really accelerate our rebuild. And I can mold this team into the team I want. Young players that I pick off their minor league system. Draft choices I pick. It doesn't seem like such a terrible way to go now, does it? A team that thinks they have a shot of winning the World Series, if they can get Freddie Peralta, if they can get Francisco Lindor, Bo Bichette, Luis Robert, who maybe 2-year contract, prove that he's healthy, he's having a great year. Mashes lefties, hits .350 against lefties. You can get a lot for that. That just really accelerated you 3 years in your rebuilding process. Maybe Stearns isn't so stupid after all. Maybe he took a shot almost hoping, like he did 2 years ago, that it would fail. The only difference is it didn't fail the first year. So we had to keep the team together. Maybe he's hoping this one fails. Think about my logic. Do I seem that far off? The Mets won a World Series. But Stearns is a guy that likes to build from within. And what better way to sign big contracts for 1 year? You fall out of it. Desperate teams that need pitching and this and that. And you fleece them at the trade deadline. And all of a sudden next year, you're a young team. A young, exciting team. I think I am, BJ. I think this was in his mind all along. We'll take a shot, but we have a fallback plan if it doesn't work out. And you know what? Cohen might be on board with this. That's why he'll never get fired. And Mendoza might be on board with this. Stearns might have said, look, do what you can with this team. You're safe. But we want to build a sustainable winner. And the only way to do that is this way. The more I'm talking about it, the more I bought myself into it. Yeah, Liz. J.D. Martinez is a guy that I could see down the line being a manager. I thought it was very odd that after retiring, you would think he'd want to do some things, and right away he took a baseball job. That's generally when you retire and you're out for a while. He doesn't. He doesn't have a choice, Liz. But maybe he's on board with this. Think about it. Just imagine the trade deadline. Mets are 15 out. They're halfway there already. Someone's pitcher goes down and you can get Freddie Peralta. And you're loaded with young players in the farm. What would you give up? And hope to convince him to like it here. Then you could sign him. Bo Bichette, who was great postseason performer. You could throw him at DH. He's already proven he can play third. Big bat. Bichette's not going to hit 220 this year, people. Might not hit 300. He's going to hit 260. At the end of the year, the numbers are going to be there for him. Think about it. It makes some sense now. You trade Peralta and you tell them, look, we're going to give you a chance to go win. You're a free agent. We're still interested in you. You can tell Bichette the same thing. Maybe there's a method to their madness all along. We just didn't see it. Now, when I approach that way, would you rather the Mets lose? Because if the Mets win, Bichette's probably not signing here. You might sign Peralta. If the Mets lose, you may have a lot of good young players in a year or two. Top players from other organizations because you gave them a chance to win. Think about it. Thank you so much, everybody. For the people that I haven't seen in my chat before, thank you for coming in, and I hope you're coming in again. I really do. I appreciate it. I am going to do spots on the Mets more because I enjoyed this tonight with you guys. And I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful week this week. And of course, if anything happens with the Mets, I'll be on tomorrow to talk about it. I'm not going to be a dedicated baseball channel like Wardy and all that. They do a lot of work. But I still do my music and all that stuff. So I hope you come in and check it out. And hopefully, I'll see you tomorrow. Have a great night, everybody. God bless you guys.